Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
This show is brought to you by the Open to Hope Foundation as well as the Compassionate Friends. And we want to remind you all that if you've had loss, or if you have family members or friends, or if you're working in a community where there's loss, please let people know about the Open to Hope program and about our website at opentohope.com, because we depend on you to pass the word along that we're there to help with healing. And we've got some great guests today that are going to be talking a little bit about child loss and sudden loss. And this is really a show about hope and healing. It's not a show about grief and sadness, because it's very exciting working in the field of grief and loss, because you really see how people go on to do some amazing things. And we've got two real heroes and great women on today, don't we, Heidi?
Absolutely, Mom. And like you said, we are going to be talking today on finding hope after the loss of a child. And both our guests have lost children. So not only are they going to talk the talk, but they've walked the walk. And we're going to talk today with Linda Sheldon Fell and Barbara Hopkinson. Linda is the creator of the Grief Diaries book series. So
Fantastic, a whole series.
Many books. And she's the executive director of National Grief and Hope Convention, which she'll be talking to us about. She's very involved in the grief and loss world. Barbara Hopkinson is also involved in the grief and loss world. She is an author and the founder of A Butterfly's Journey.
And she's got a fabulous book, A Butterfly's Journey.
She does. And she'll be talking to us about what she does with the Butterfly's Journey and her website. And she's also the chapter leader for the Compassionate Friends, the Newburyport, Massachusetts chapter.
All right. Well, welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So great to have you both on, and I love everything you're doing. It's just so fascinating on the net, and we really appreciate it. We'll have to also say that we're sad that you both are with us because you've had a loss.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And I know, Barbara, you lost your son.
Yes, I lost my 21-year-old son, and then Brent, and then I had I lost my full-term stillborn son, Robbie, and I had a miscarriage as well.
Wow. How did they come in?
The miscarriage was first, and then when Brent and Brad were 6 and 4, Robbie was stillborn. And then 15 years later, Brent died in a motorcycle accident.
And how old was he?
He was 21. He just turned 21.
Wow. And how long's that been?
That's been 13 years, almost 14 years now.
All right. Yeah.
That's tough.
And how about you, Linda?
I lost our third child out of 4, Allie, in a car accident in 2009. She was coming back from watching Michael Phelps compete at the U.S. Open in Seattle. And
she was a swimmer?
A USA sanctioned swimmer, competitive athlete. And it was, it turns your world upside down. It's, there's no words to describe the aftermath.
How old was she at the time?
15.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you both lost kids very young.
Yeah.
So let's start with you first, and then we'll get to Linda. Barbara, talk about your Butterfly's Journey and your journey. I mean, you worked for IBM, right? Was that right?
Yes, I did 30 years in the corporate world, international technology work, and 10 of that was at IBM. And while I was there, I had all 3 of my children while I was in the corporate world. But when Brent died, the 21-year-old, that really turned things upside down even more so, because then my 30-year marriage fell apart. So I had to I kind of hit bottom, and then I had to make a choice to heal and just decide that I was going to, one day at a time, just dig my way out. And so that's when, not long after that, I started the Compassionate Friends chapter. And then later on...
How far were you out when you started that chapter?
1 year.
Okay, because they do ask for, you were a little early, I think they asked for 18 months, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what they do ask for. I'm not sure. I guess I didn't
they
pay a lot
usually
of
ask for
attention
18
to it.
months.
But there wasn't any chapters right near me. It was like an hour away, and they were pretty big ones.
Yeah.
So I just decided that it would be a little bit better to do that, and I knew it would reach out. I instinctively knew that it would help me to help others.
And did it?
Yes, very much so.
We found that through service, it really does help.
Heidi's on the board, right, Heidi?
Yeah, I'm on the board of the Compassionate Friends,
Yes.
and my mother used to be on the board, and it's an amazing organization.
Yeah.
But yeah, being of service is such a way to shift energy. I mean, when you've had a loss, you feel like you've been victimized, something's been done to you. It's so disempowering. And to move that grief outwards towards service, when you're ready, because
Yeah, when
you know,
I-
oftentimes we're not ready initially.
And everybody has their own time frame of when they're ready
Yeah.
too. Some people do it right away, like Candy Lightner started Mad, and you know,
Yeah.
like the next day. But yeah, some people are.
No, it is everybody, but it's just so powerful in getting the focus off of yourself, and people are grateful, and that heals you
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, yeah.
The
Absolutely.
gratitude for your help to them.
Yeah.
it's
And
amazing.
Linda, how about you? How long did it take you after your daughter died, and how did you get into
Well,
the publishing and all that?
You know, we had a little bit of very interesting circumstances. My husband did not grieve very much. He contained it inside, and less than 3 years after losing our daughter, he suffered a major stroke at age 46, and it rendered him paralyzed on his right side, and he lost his speech, his reading, writing, and math. And so once again, our life changed on a dime, and you know, I was just starting to come out of the fog, and then I go right back into the fog.
That's really
And I learned very early on, I learned that when I help others, it helps my own heart to heal.
Yeah.
And so even in the midst of the grief and the fog, I could feel that. And so when I reached out to another mama who was beginning her journey, or sometimes it was a mama who was even years down the road but didn't have the support that I had, when I would wrap my arms around them, healing took place in my own heart. And so that is, you know, that's pretty powerful stuff when you realize that. And so I started a radio show and then did some filming, and now we're in the you know, compiling the Grief Diary series of sharing people's stories through tragedy, but also that resiliency, celebrating their resiliency, because what they do when they share that story of surviving, they give hope to those who are just beginning.
Absolutely, and I
So-
love that idea, because you're not only sharing the story of surviving, you're sharing the story of how they went on to thrive. And you two are definitely examples of that. And as you just said, Linda, it's so important early on, because early on we don't know how we're going to survive. And it's
You
like
feel
we
it's
need to,
insurvivable, and yet you
Yes.
look and you see these other people who are
Yes.
surviving, and you wonder how are
Totally.
they breathing? How are they?
Totally.
How are they taking those steps?
And they're the lifelines.
So we become the light.
Yeah.
And that, you know, your heart can hold joy at the same time as it holds sorrow, and who knows that? You don't know that until you face those circumstances.
I like that you're saying
And
that.
Yeah, yeah.
You can
yeah.
hold
The
joy
sorrow
and
will
sorrow
always be
at the
there.
same time.
Yeah,
Right,
but the
exactly.
joy also comes back in, and when you're early on, you can't fathom that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, suddenly those of us who were further down the journey become that light of hope that it is survivable, and there is a life that you can embrace in the aftermath of loss, and it can be beautiful.
Absolutely.
I do tell a lot of my the people in my chapter, and now people that I work with in my nonprofit as well, that it's things changed for me when I stopped thinking about my son's life just as a loss and the pain, and started thinking about his life as a gift to me, no matter how short it was. But several of them have said, just the example that you thrive and are fine, it gives me hope.
Absolutely.
Well, I wanted to ask you, Barbara, I wanted to talk a little bit about your website, because you've got a ton of interesting YouTubes on there. You've got advice on nutrition. You've got some great things going on. But talk a little bit about people writing on their arm, because we've got a little
photos.
video we want to show
Oh, okay. All right.
of those.
We do, yeah. So the nonprofit is a butterfly's journey to a new normal, and one of the things we do is these what we call Choose to Heal photo shoots. So we bring grievers together, or we go to somebody else's organization as part of their event, and we have them write on their skin what message they want. So it allows them, really, it's very cathartic for them to be able to write something, and then we take a picture of them with a black background. So they come up with some beautiful sayings like, grief is the price of love, or you're not lost, you're in my heart, or you know, though the voice is quiet, the spirit echoes still. I mean, all these beautiful sayings, and so what it captures is you see their face and you see their sayings that are from their heart, and it's beautiful, it's emotional.
It's powerful.
And so we have a photo gallery on the site.
Yeah,
That's
and you
beautiful.
also have it on a clip,
Thank
and
you.
we're going to show that right now.
Okay.
This is Jen. She chose to heal after losing her 3.5-month-old son to blunt force trauma by his father. She packed up her house and moved cross-country with her 4-year-old daughter and restarted her life. You can imagine Jen went through a kind of mother's horror that was excruciating and experience fear at starting over. Support and persistence is crucial for recovery. It was for Jen as she chose to heal using multiple forms of support systems and resources.
That was
It's
beautiful.
one of my video
It
blogs.
is.
So the photo that you see is what I was talking about, that Choose to Heal photos. And then what I do is a series of video blogs where we take one of those photos, I introduce the person and then a topic. And that particular one was support, and types of support. And then I give tips on what you might do to find different types of support. So that was a portion of that.
I love it,
Video
particularly with the
blogs.
tattoo world going on. I
Yeah.
love the tattoos.
Yeah,
I love that people are just able to write that on their arm. It's really, and what have you seen happen with people who have done that?
Oh, it's, they do it and it's amazing. They come out and they're just like, wow, that was powerful. I'm getting more reaction than I expected. I had one woman who had lost her brother 50 years ago, and she came and did it, and she came over to me and her eyes were wet, and she was like, said, wow, you had a reaction like that? She said, yes, it felt like I was connected back to my brother. It's just something visceral. It's not about even what you say necessarily. It's just kind of a visceral reaction to connecting into the emotion and being allowed, I think, to express yourself. Because
That's
we
what I'm
don't talk
thinking.
about grief in
It's-
this culture,
Yeah.
and they can express anything they
It's
want.
very expressive.
Yeah.
It makes a
And
huge
it's visual.
statement. Yeah.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
visual.
And it's so big. I mean, they're just big.
I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
And are you writing those words on
They come up with the words,
Okay.
and myself and the photographer, and
Yeah.
sometimes we have an assistant, however we do it, and help them write it so it's neat and visual.
I love it.
And then my photographer sets up the light, and she's got the background and the cameras.
And what
just
an
takes the
amazing
shots.
image for them to have.
Yes, then we
Right?
send them a black and white and a photo and a color copy.
Wow.
We
Incredible.
email them pictures of whatever, and they can do it. You can do it with one person like that, or you can do it with a family, like the remaining people in the family, or you can do it with friends. We've got one that it takes a village, and it's got my husband and myself and one of my girlfriends with her daughter and her granddaughter.
Oh, that's incredible.
So it's just, you can do it in any way you want to.
Yeah.
And you write across multiple people.
Oh my
So
God.
one phrase gets written across
Oh, I
multiple
love
people.
that.
Very
So it's
creative.
Yeah, right?
it is. You can make it as creative as you want. There's one that's my daughter-in-law, who's a photographer, Renee McKenna Photography. She came up with something where my girlfriend and I were both bereaved mothers, and I'm just going to pose it with you. We actually were like this, and she wrote healing across both of our arms.
Oh my
So
God.
we're looking at each other like we're really helping
Wow.
each other. So it's amazing what you
very
can
cool.
portray with one word and
Yeah.
a picture.
It's
yeah.
so interesting. It sounds like the old family therapy world. We used to do all sorts of things, tie people up together and do all sorts of things. So,
It's funny, but I'd love to take it and do it at events and conferences
Yes.
and things like that.
It
It's
would be
just so
very
wonderful.
powerful.
And
Yeah.
it takes a little bit of space and not much time.
Yeah.
absolutely, it's
Amazing.
fantastic.
Thank you.
Well, Linda, I want you to tell us about your. Were you a publisher before your daughter died, or
was
were you in the
not.
media, or where?
I was not.
You've just done.
Wow.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh! Don't you
yeah.
think fear is one thing you lose?
Yes, absolutely.
Makes it clear what's
I'm
important,
really glad
certainly,
that you
what's
brought
not.
that up because, when you lose a child, you've lost your worst fear came true.
Yeah.
So everything else kind of pales in,
Right.
in comparison
Yeah,
to it.
absolutely.
So suddenly you do find this courage in you, but sometimes it can be a little bit dangerous because I remember feeling for a little while, there was a period of time where I felt almost a little bit reckless because I wasn't afraid. And, and that's not okay. That's not safe. That's not
Right.
healthy. And so you kind of have to make sure you temper that, where just because you feel like you faced the worst fear that would ever come true, it's not okay to start, doing reckless behavior. And I remember, this is something I can laugh about now, but there was a time where I went into a particular store and I would get cart rage. They better look out of my way because I'm cart rage.
funny.
And yeah.
Yeah,
So.
sometimes you're just crazy, and
Yeah,
particularly in the
yeah.
second year, you can feel really crazy at times.
Yes, where that fog is kind of lifted, but you're still in the beginning and your heart is just shattered and you're not sure how you're going to go on and what is life going to hold, all your joy, you know, your world's been robbed of color and sound. And
Isn't
it's,
it interesting
Well,
that
that's a
everything
wonderful
can
way
be
to put it.
gray?
How visual is
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
The world's been robbed of color and
Yeah.
sound. I love
Yeah.
that.
You remember everything was gray? It's weird.
Yes.
Even when it was
Yeah.
a
Black
sunny
and
day.
Yeah, and you're,
It's like,
you're so
you remember
foggy, your
that?
head.
Yeah.
You feel stupid. I felt very stupid. It's like, I'm a smart woman.
Yeah.
I felt so stupid for months. I
Yeah.
couldn't,
Well,
I couldn't
and
read
the
or listen to
permanence, the
music.
permanence is
Yeah.
starting to sink in. Like this, my brother Scott will never ever be physically in my life again.
Yeah.
You know, every day you wake up and say, "This really happened. This is permanent. This is my new life."
Yeah.
It's a hard reality to
is.
kind of wrap your arms around initially.
But I got to tell you one little thing that relates back to your point about how it's like the worst thing that possibly could happen to me has. It happened to me, and I was trying to change jobs. I was at a very high-pressure job at IBM, and I was trying to
Okay.
change, and my boss wasn't letting me out. And when my son died, I called him and said, the worst thing that could happen to me has, you have no power over me anymore. I don't
Oh,
give
wow.
a darn about
My
your
goodness.
deadlines or your quotas.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
either let me out of this job or I'm leaving the company.
Yeah.
Just because everything else was
Yeah.
It paled
unimportant.
in comparison.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Suddenly things
Amazing.
are put into
So it
perspective.
makes you very strong.
So,
But
yeah, you find your
but you
voice
say-
pretty quickly.
But I'm,
yeah.
I'm struck because given what you're all saying, which is that we've climbed Mount Everest. This is the worst thing that could ever happen to us. But yet I look at all of you and think, but you have hope again. You have joy. You're living such rich lives. How do you think that's happened?
You have to fight for it.
Okay,
I
I like
did.
that.
I had to fight for it. I had to force myself. You know, your world becomes robbed of Technicolor. You think of The Wizard of Oz was the first movie in color, right?
Yeah.
And they begin it where it's gray, and then the color comes back in, and it suddenly becomes beautiful again. Well, when you're in that the beginning stages of loss that's so profound, you can't fathom that the color will come back into your world. So you have to, I had to fight for it. Suddenly, although the birds were still singing outside my bedroom window, I was deaf to them. I couldn't hear them,
Yeah.
right? That didn't
Yeah.
register in here. And so I fought to hear them again. I fought to find the beauty in life once again. And it took, you know, it's almost
So
like
you'd make a conscious, you'd set an intention.
I
I'm
did.
going to find gratitude.
Yeah.
I'm going to find the positive things every single
Yeah.
day of my life.
I absolutely.
this.
And you know, and it's baby steps. You start
Yeah.
out thinking, okay, I'm gonna, you know, feel or smell or hear one thing of beauty every day. It's kind of like beginning a new exercise routine, right? It's always hardest in the beginning. And so it's like, okay, I'm going to smell the cookies that my neighbor's baking. So normally you would think that it'd smell really good, but suddenly you're void of all this, you know, color. And with a little bit of effort, you add in, okay, tomorrow I'm going to, you know, recognize 2 things of beauty today. And so over time it becomes normal again because you know, you practice it. And so it becomes easier and easier. And then before you know it, it takes no effort at all. And the joy is back again. So, but
Yeah.
you had to fight.
I
I had
like
to
that.
fight for it.
Yeah, no, I did in a slightly different way. It sent me on a journey to find out if my son's spirit continued. And so, and I was like a crazy person because I was, I'm an action-oriented person anyway. But so I went out and I started reading everything I could read about spirituality and try to exploring and energy healing and, you know, and then trying different things like meditation and journaling and exercise and just kept trying things to see what worked. And that's, you know, so I was choosing to heal.
Yeah.
And now in hindsight, I know trying to find a new normal. What's my life going to be like? And like I said, over time, you know, I healed, or everything helped a little bit. Some things help more than others.
Right.
But I just think it's important to keep an open mind because sometimes you don't try stuff because you've never tried it before.
Right.
And I think you should just keep an open mind and try it. And if it doesn't work, then discard it. And if it works, great, then do it some more. You know? And eventually you will find a half a dozen things that help, each of them a little bit, but cumulatively they help a lot and over time. And then, like I said, then things start to shift when you start thinking about the positive memories and, oh, what a gift his life was, as opposed to just focused on the pain.
Right.
Did either of you have a turning point that you remember?
That was, for me, that when I talk about, when it dawned on me about thinking of his life as a gift rather than a loss, was around the end of my 3rd year. That was one of the big ones. And then I had others, you know, probably at 5 years and 10 years, and, you know, but yeah.
Yeah. Did you have a particular turning point, Linda?
I did, but it came a little later for me because of my husband's stroke. And, you know, with the stroke, I became grieving for the living. I became grieving for the husband that he was before, even
Grieving
though he
for
was
the
still
life
alive.
you thought you were going to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, your future
Yeah.
that you thought
Yeah.
you were going to have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And of course now he's almost 4 years in, and I feel very blessed, and our life is very good, and I have him by my side, and that's all that matters.
And is he still dealing with the ramifications of the
Oh
stroke?
yes, he always will.
Oh,
Yeah. But
okay.
you know, I think people often say with grief, you know, you look like you're doing well. Well, the grief is always there, but your coping skills get stronger over time.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with the stroke. You know, we've adapted, we've
Right.
adjusted, and now life is, you know, I feel very blessed. And you know, that's a hard concept because people see you, and they see the bereaved mother. Like we're not supposed to laugh again. We're not supposed to smile again or feel joy. And I had to. It's a matter of survival.
Right.
I had to, you know, because at the time I was, you know, in my 40s. I'm 50 now. But I thought, well, longevity is in my family. So how am I going to go another 50 years
Not
with
be
this
happy.
kind of heartache?
Yeah.
And yeah, that was a very long time.
So you didn't want all this to steal your soul and who you were.
Well, I wanted to find a way to do something with it.
Yeah.
And there was my turning point of, again, the action-oriented, because it makes me feel better when I feel like I'm doing something that is helping others, because that helps my own heart to heal. And many people don't have the support that I was blessed with. And so I created a convention. It was a year ago this month, and that was my turning point, because what came from that was
How many people attended your convention?
not very many, not nearly enough. But there were some really great lessons I learned from
I
that.
love the
And,
very first thing. It takes a lot of courage to do it and be happy with whoever attends.
Yeah.
You
when
know,
you start.
we always said that you know, Mother Teresa once said that even if there's one person, you know, you don't focus on numbers.
Yeah.
You focus on who you're going to help. And so even if there's one person in the audience, that one person needs you.
Yeah.
That makes me
So
feel
does
better.
that make him any less
Well,
valuable?
Linda, I'm in private practice as a psychologist, and there's always only one person in my office.
There you go.
Besides
Thank
me.
you.
That's me and
And
my
you're
client.
impacting
That's
that
it.
person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's my day. One
Yeah,
person.
That's right. And you know, the difference that you make for them
Yeah.
is lifelong.
Exactly.
And it may not be for you, but it is for them. And, that's pretty
and it
profound.
doesn't just impact that one person. It impacts
Their world.
generations.
And that's
it has a
right.
ripple effect.
That's right.
Whoever they interact with, their
Yes.
children, their children, their children. It goes on and on and on.
Absolutely.
So you never know where
That's-
your influence ends, basically.
and you don't need to know.
Absolutely.
You,
yeah.
you
yeah.
just and so with the convention, I took away from that the power of people sharing their stories. And what happened there is all two people in the audience. Just kidding, there was one. But you know, they people started connecting, realizing that they both shared the same death anniversary of their loved one, or their children's names were the same, or this or that, and these friendships were formed, and these connections, these lifelong connections, and stories were shared. Stories were swapped, and so people suddenly didn't feel so alone. And that was my turning point of, okay, how do we reach out to those that don't have that?
Yeah.
So
One thing I'm thinking about both of you and for our audience, because I know if you've had a loss, other losses come too.
yeah, that's right.
Your
Yeah,
husband had a
and-
stroke.
Yeah, well, my- Yes,
Yeah,
I,
you
w-
look-
I
you got
actually, I
divorced.
actually,
That's the death of a
I had
parent.
several.
Yeah,
I had
yeah.
several things. I actually attempted suicide because it got that bad. There was so many things all at like in the same time
Yeah.
frame, about 9 months after my older son died. But that's again when you make the choice and realize you can't do that. I can't do that to my remaining son,
Right.
and that makes you stronger and it ties you together. And then. As you go through other losses. I've lost the sight in my right eye, and that was through just a fall, just an accident.
Oh, wow.
And so, but somebody said to me, "Oh my God, how can you deal with that?" I said, "It's nothing compared to losing a child."
Well, you just
So
keep
it's
going
just
on.
and it just gives you this different perspective. So that, and I tell people this. Sometimes it takes them a while to feel like maybe it can happen to them too. That this is you wouldn't choose this way to get there, but it makes you so strong. I don't feel like anything can take me down.
So you've got somebody
So-
called it the other day a grief muscle.
Yes.
That they had a grief
Yeah,
muscle.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask, I don't know, for some reason it just comes up to me, I want to ask you, do you guys ever have any signs? Do you have any special signs for
Oh
your
yeah.
kids?
Where do I start? My next book is about credible signs.
Ah, love it.
So I'll just mention one for sake of time. But so I actually saw a friend of mine who's a musician who had never met my son channel a song from my son. And then he realized that he could communicate through her, and he'd start giving her messages for me. So she'd text me at times, and she'd know like what I was doing. She was nowhere near me. And I moved into this temporary house for a while, and I took a walk that morning before I unpacked, and as I'm walking back, I get a text from her that says, "Brent says be careful going up your front steps, Mom."
Wow.
And, you know, okay. I was, you know, kind of used to getting messages, so I just grinned, said thanks. When I got back, the entire step was cracked.
Wow.
And I hadn't seen it yet. And if I had put my weight on it, I would have gone flying. So I want a book full of signs like that.
Yeah, those are powerful.
Interview people, because,
Yeah.
you know, in talking to the people of my chapter, some of the signs are incredible.
Yeah.
And it gives you hope.
Yeah. How about you,
absolutely.
Linda?
One of the books coming out May 30th is Hello from Heaven. And as you know, Bill and Judy Guggenheim did that one a number of years ago. And Bill gave me his blessing to do Grief
it.
Diaries, Hello from Heaven. And it's a compilation of people's signs.
Okay.
Because it's very, like you said, it gives them hope.
Yeah.
And so yes, in answer to your question, I've had a lot of signs. And, you know, that's really incredible. It's really incredible. It really is healing for your
Yeah,
heart
it's
to
wonderful,
know
yeah.
that their spirit, their love is forever.
Yeah. Now, we're going to close the show now, and I want to ask you guys, are you happy? Are you having fun?
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. No, really, I mean, I've been lucky enough to actually, I'm married for a second time, and there were three, and he has a wonderful 6'9", lovely man, Jim. He's
Love
got
it.
3 adult stepchildren that are really like my own now, and my own son, who's remaining, Brad, is getting married.
Oh,
congratulations.
June 18th.
Oh,
So I'm thrilled. Yeah, and I love his
That's
fiance, and
wonderful.
her family, and yeah, so things are very good.
And you're
That's
having fun with your grief diaries?
I have fun with a lot of different endeavors. I feel very blessed. I meet the coolest people, and that's such a
We
silver
grieve in
lining.
community. I think that's one thing
It becomes
that
a
people
family.
should get if they get
Yeah.
anything from this show.
Yeah.
It's that
Yeah.
we're
You're never
loving
alone.
you guys and grieving
Yeah.
in community. So we hope that you will grieve in community yourself. If you've had a loss, make sure you get people around you and stay supported. And Heidi and I always want to say, you want to say it, Heidi?
Please lean on our hope until you find your own.
And God bless you in your day.